Piper cub shuddered, coughed, and held. May Calloway kept her hands light on the yoke. Light the way her father had taught her, back when she was 9 and could barely see over the instrument panel. You don't grip a plane, he'd said. You hold it the way you hold a baby bird. Firm enough so it don't fall. Loose enough so it don't crush. Below her, the wheat stretched out in every direction. 10,000 acres of gold and green, rolling in slow waves under the July wind. The Calloway farm. 3 generations of dirt under fingernails. 2 generations of this little yellow plane. The engine coughed again. A sputter. A hiccup. Then it steadied. May glanced at the fuel gauge. The needle sat just above the red. She'd known it would be tight. She'd known it when she'd taken off from the dirt strip behind the barn 40 minutes ago. But the south quarter needed spraying before the heat set in, and the forecast said rain by Thursday, and the aphids didn't care about forecasts. The aphids cared about eating. She banked left. The wingtip dipped close over the wheat, close enough that she could see the heads swaying in her slipstream. The spray rig under the belly hissed and spit its white mist across the crop. A clean line. Even coverage. No gaps. She'd been flying this route since she was 14. First as her father's spotter, sitting in the back seat with a clipboard and a radio, calling out where the patches were worst. Then, after the stroke took his left side and his depth perception went with it, she'd taken the yoke. 16 years old. No license. No one to report her. Just a girl and a plane and 10,000 acres that would go fallow if she didn't fly. That had been 6 years ago. Now the plane was hers. The farm was hers. The debt was hers. And the engine was dying because she couldn't afford a rebuild and she couldn't afford not to fly. She finished the south quarter. Pulled up. Let the cub climb to 400 feet and turn north toward the strip. The engine ran rough now, a steady tremor she could feel in her teeth. She talked to it the way her father used to talk to the old tractor. Come on, girl. Just a little further. Just get me home. The strip appeared ahead. 2 ruts in the dirt, marked by orange cones at each end. Beyond it, the barn. Beyond the barn, the farmhouse with its sagging porch and its screen door that didn't close right. She flared. Set the cub down on the left rut, then the right. The tail wheel kissed the dirt. She rolled to a stop and killed the engine. The propeller ticked and slowed. Silence. The good kind. The kind that lived out here, where the nearest neighbor was 2 miles east and the nearest town was 20. May sat for a moment with her hands still on the yoke. Her knuckles were white. They were always white after a flight, because every flight now carried the quiet question of whether the engine would hold. Whether this would be the one where it didn't. She climbed out. Her boots hit the dirt. She walked to the cowling and laid her palm flat against the metal. It was hot. It ticked under her hand like a tired heart. Thank you, she whispered. She meant it. The farmhouse kitchen smelled like coffee and dust. May poured a cup and stood at the window, looking out at the fields. The wheat was doing okay. Not great. The rain had come late in May, and the heat had come early in June. They'd get a harvest, but it would be thin. Thin meant the bank would call. Thin meant another year of stretching. Her mother's chair sat at the head of the table. Empty. Had been empty for 3 years now. Cancer had taken her slow and quiet, the way cancer does in places where people don't go to the doctor until something's already wrong. May still set a plate there sometimes. Not every day. Just the days when the silence got too loud. The phone rang. May let it. Landline phones out here mostly brought 2 things. Telemarketers and the bank. She wasn't in the mood for either. It rang again. And again. She picked it up on the 5th ring. Hello. Is this May Calloway? A woman's voice. Crisp. Official. The kind of voice that had never once had to shout over a crop duster engine. Speaking. My name is Dr. Lena Vasquez. I'm calling from the Department of Defense, Advanced Personnel Assessment Division. Am I speaking with the pilot who logged the aerial telemetry on FAA registration N4472K? May blinked. That was the Cub's registration. Her father's old registration, really. She'd never changed it. That's my plane, May said. What telemetry? Your flight data. specifically the patterns recorded over the last 18 months. We monitor civilian aviation telemetry in certain corridors for research purposes. Your flight paths flagged an anomaly. An anomaly. Your approach vectors during low-altitude agricultural passes show a consistency and spatial precision that our models can't replicate. You're reading terrain, wind shear, and thermal variation in real time and adjusting your flight path with a reaction speed that exceeds our top military pilots by a significant margin. We'd like to invite you to Naval Air Station Miramar for a 3-day evaluation. May looked out the window. The wheat moved in the wind. The barn leaned a little to the south, the way it had since the storm in 2019. I can't leave the farm, she said. It's spraying season. We can compensate you for lost time. 3 days. Flights, lodging, meals, all covered. There's also a stipend. How much? The number the woman said made May's hand tighten on the phone. I'll think about it, May said. She hung up, poured a second cup of coffee, stood at the window and watched the wheat and thought about nothing for a long time. She called back the next morning. The Navy sent a car to the Wichita airport, then a plane, then another car. May sat in the back of the second car, a black sedan with tinted windows, and watched San Diego scroll past like a postcard. Palm trees, ocean, people in shorts. She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt she'd had since high school, and she felt like a dirt clod in a jewelry store. The base appeared through the windshield. Gates, guards, a flag snapping in a wind that smelled like salt instead of soil. The car passed through, turned again, and stopped in front of a low concrete building with no sign. Dr. Vasquez met her at the door. She was tall, dark-haired, maybe 50. She wore a gray blazer and no jewelry, and she shook May's hand with a grip that meant business. Thank you for coming, Ms. Calloway. May, let me walk you through what this is. You're here as a civilian observer. You're not being recruited, not yet. We want to put you in a simulator environment and record your responses. That's all. 3 days. You fly, we watch, you go home. Clear? Clear. Good. You'll be billeted in the visitor quarters. Single room. Mess hall is building 6. Open from 0500 to 2100. You'll have a liaison officer who'll walk you through the schedule. Any questions? May had 100 questions. What kind of simulator? Who else would be there? Why her, specifically, out of every crop duster in the country? But she'd learned a long time ago that the fastest way to get an answer was to wait. People filled silence if you let them, so she just nodded. Vasquez seemed to respect that. She handed May a lanyard with a visitor badge and a room key. Get settled. First session is tomorrow at 0800. Get some sleep. The visitor quarters were clean and small. A bed, a desk, a window that looked out at a row of hangers. May set her duffel bag on the bed, unzipped it. She'd brought 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, and a photograph of her father sitting in the Piper Cub, smiling, the summer before the stroke. She propped the photo on the nightstand. She lay down. The mattress was too soft. The room was too quiet. No engine ticking. No wind in the wheat. No screen door banging. She slept badly. Morning came gray and cool. May ate eggs and toast in the mess hall, sitting alone at a long table while pilots and crew chiefs moved around her in a current of noise and purpose. They wore flight suits and carried helmets and talked in a shorthand she couldn't follow. Call signs, sorties, bingo fuel, angel altitude, a language built for speed, for trust, for the sky. She finished her coffee and found the evaluation building. The simulator room was bigger than she'd expected. 3 full-motion rigs sat in a row, each one a cockpit shell mounted on hydraulic legs. Screens wrapped the interior in 270 degrees. The detail was obscene. Every switch, every gauge, every worn edge on the throttle. It looked like the inside of a real jet, and it smelled like one too. That particular mix of plastic and metal and old sweat. A cluster of people stood near the rigs. Instructors, May guessed. 6 or 7 of them. Flight suits, clipboards, tablets. They talked in low voices and glanced at her when she walked in. She saw their eyes do the quick sweep. Jeans, flannel, boots with dirt still in the seams. The assessment was instant and unflattering. One of them stepped forward. A man in his 40s, square-jawed, with a patch on his chest that read Cdr. D. Holloway. Instructor. Ms. Calloway. I'm Commander Holloway. I'll be running your evaluation. This is a simplified F-35 simulator. We've stripped out the weapon systems and the sensor fusion layer. What you'll be flying is the airframe. Throttle, stick, rudder, basic instruments. The scenario is a one-on-one engagement in a canyon environment. You'll be flying against an AI opponent first, just to get your hands on the controls. Then, if you're comfortable, we'll put you up against a live pilot. A live pilot. Our top performer, Lieutenant Jake Reeves, callsign Vandal. He's flown this sim 412 times. He knows every inch of the canyon. Holloway paused. You don't have to do the live portion. No pressure. May looked at the simulator, looked at the cockpit, looked at the throttle, worn smooth on the left side from hundreds of hands. I'll do it, she said. Holloway nodded. He didn't look convinced. None of them did. She could feel it, the way they'd already decided what she was. A curiosity, a data point, a farm girl they'd pulled out of a wheat field because an algorithm blinked. She climbed into the simulator. The seat was tight. The harness pressed her shoulders back. The screens lit up around her. A canyon, red rock walls, a strip of blue sky above. The engine sound came through the speakers, low and steady, alive. She put her hands on the controls, and something shifted. It was subtle, acetylene, like the feeling she got when the cub lifted off the dirt strip and the ground fell away and it was just her and the air and the machine. The noise in her head went quiet. The instructors, the badges, the Navy, the debt, the wheat, all of it dropped away. There was only the stick under her fingers, the throttle under her palm, and the canyon ahead, waiting. Whenever you're ready, Holloway said over the intercom. May pushed the throttle forward. The engine roared. The simulator lurched on its hydraulics. The canyon walls blurred past. She flew. The AI opponent was fast. It flew clean, by the book, every turn calculated, every vector optimal. May watched it on her display, a red triangle banking through the canyon ahead of her. She followed. The canyon walls were close, too close for comfort in a real jet. She flew them anyway, reading the rock the way she read the wheat, where the shadows meant a thermal updraft, where the narrowing meant a crosswind funnel, where the sun angle would blind a sensor. She caught the AI in 40 seconds, pulled inside its turn, locked up. The simulator beeped. Kill confirmed. Silence on the intercom. She flew the scenario again, and again, each time faster, each time tighter. She wasn't thinking. That was the thing. She wasn't thinking the way the instructors probably thought a pilot should think. No calculations, no geometry, just feel. The way a bird feels the air. The way her father had taught her to feel the crop below the plane, to know where the aphids were by the color of the leaves, to know where the wind would push before it pushed. After the fourth run, Holloway's voice came through. Take 5. Stretch. Then we'll do the live portion. May climbed out. Her hands were steady. Her heart was calm. She drank water from a fountain in the hall and stretched her shoulders and went back in. The instructors had multiplied. There were 9 of them now. Maybe 10. Some had pulled up chairs. One was recording on a phone. Holloway stood by the second simulator. Beside him was a man May hadn't seen before. Late 20s. Lean. Sharp eyes. A flight suit with the name Reeves stitched above the pocket and a patch that showed a grinning skull with aviator goggles. This is Lieutenant Jake Reeves, Holloway said. Vandal. He'll be your opponent for the live engagement. Reeves looked at May. He looked at her boots, her flannel, her hair pulled back in a plain ponytail. He looked at her the way a man looks at a dog that's wandered onto a runway. Not mean, just confused. Hey, he said. You sure you want to do this? The canyon scenario gets aggressive. I won't go easy, but I'll keep it safe. I don't need you to go easy, May said. He smiled. A small, polite smile. The kind you give a child who says she's going to ride the big roller coaster. Sure, he said. Okay. They climbed into their respective simulators. The screens lit. The canyon appeared. Red rock, blue sky, two jets, facing each other from opposite ends. Holloway's voice. Scenario is a neutral merge. No altitude advantage, no speed advantage. First to achieve a lock wins. You have the canyon. Use it. Begin on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. May pushed the throttle to full. The engine screamed. The simulator slammed back. The canyon walls blurred. And she was gone. Not in the room anymore. Not in the Navy. Not in San Diego. She was in the air, in the rock, in the wind. The stick was an extension of her hand. The throttle was an extension of her breath. The canyon wasn't an obstacle. It was a partner. She saw Reeves' jet on her display. He was fast. Clean. He flew the canyon like he'd memorized it, cutting every corner, riding every wall. He was good. He was very good. He flew the way a surgeon cuts. Precise. Practiced. Perfect. May flew the way a river flows. She dropped low. Below the canyon floor, where the rock narrowed and the shadows pooled. Reeves wouldn't follow. No one would. The clearance was too tight, the margins too thin. But May had spent 6 years flying a Piper Cub at 30 feet over wheat, reading the ground by feel, trusting her hands more than her eyes. She pulled the jet into the gap. The rock walls passed so close she could see the striations in the stone. The simulator shuddered. Alarms blared. She ignored them. She came up behind him. Reeves' voice on the radio, calm, controlled. I see you. Nice trick. Not gonna work twice. He broke right, hard. A textbook defensive turn. The kind they taught at this very school. The kind that worked against every pilot who flew by the book. May didn't follow the turn. She went over it. She pulled the jet up, vertical, straight up the canyon wall. The G-force hit her chest. The simulator groaned. She crested the ridge and rolled, coming down on the other side in a hammerhead that no manual recommended. She was behind him again, and above him, and he didn't know where she was because he was looking where a pilot should be, and she wasn't there. The lock tone sounded. Steady. Solid. Kill confirmed. The simulator went quiet. May sat in the cockpit. Her hands were on the controls. Her breathing was even. She felt the way she always felt after a spray run. Calm. Clean. Like the sky had washed something off her. The intercom crackled. Holloway's voice, and it sounded different. Flatter. Slower. Like a man who'd just watched something he couldn't explain. Run it again, he said. They ran it again. May won in 31 seconds. Again. 26 seconds. Again. 22 seconds. Reeves tried everything. He tried the high ground. He tried the low ground. He tried speed. He tried angles. He tried the canyon walls, the sun, the shadows. May read every move before he made it, the way she read the weather before it broke. Not by data, by feel. By 6 years of wind and dirt and a sputtering engine and a father's voice saying, don't think it. Feel it. The plane knows. You just gotta listen. After the 5th run, Holloway said, stand down. May climbed out of the simulator. The room was silent. Not the quiet kind of silence. The frozen kind. The kind where 10 people are standing very still and breathing very carefully because their brains are trying to process something that doesn't fit the model. Reeves climbed out of his simulator. He pulled off his headset. He looked at May. He looked at the screen where her flight path was replayed in blue and his in red. Her line was smooth, organic, almost lazy. His was sharp, angular, desperate. How? He said. Not angry. Not defensive. Just asking. Genuinely asking, the way a person asks when the ground has shifted under them. May shrugged. I fly low all the time. Over crops. You learn to read the ground. Where the air lifts. Where it sinks. Where it twists. The canyon's the same. It's just taller wheat. No one laughed. No one moved. Reeves looked at Holloway. Holloway looked at his tablet. He looked at the data. He looked at May. He looked at the data again. Ms. Calloway, he said. His voice was careful. Can you step outside with me for a moment? They stood in the hallway. The concrete was cool under May's boots. Through a window, she could see the flight line. Jets parked in a row, heat shimmering off the tarmac. Somewhere, an engine whined up and a plane taxied toward the runway. The sound was familiar and foreign at the same time. All engines sounded alike in the end. All of them were just controlled explosions and someone's hands on a stick, and a prayer that the thing held together. Holloway leaned against the wall. He'd taken off his flight suit jacket. His undershirt was damp. He looked like a man who'd been running. "I've been an instructor here for 14 years, he said. "I've trained over 200 pilots. I've watched some of the best natural flyers in the world walk through that door. Reeves is the best I've ever coached. He's got the hands, the mind, the instinct. He's the ceiling, the top of the curve." He paused. "You just beat him 5 for 5, and your reaction times are 40% faster than his. Your spatial processing is off any scale we have. You flew that canyon like you've been flying it your whole life, and you've never been in a jet before today." May leaned against the opposite wall, crossed her arms. "I told you, I fly low, every day, 6 years. You learn things when you're 30 feet off the dirt and the engine's coughing and the bank's calling. You learn to read the air because if you don't, you crash." "I believe you," Holloway said. "And that's the problem." "What's the problem?" "The problem is that you shouldn't exist. Not at this level. Not without training. What you did in there isn't skill. Skill can be taught. What you did is something else. It's a way of seeing. A way of being in the air. And we don't know how to teach it. We don't even know how to describe it." He rubbed his face. "I called Vasquez. She's on her way down. There's going to be a conversation about what happens next." "I told you," May said. "I can't leave the farm." "I know. The wheat's coming in. If I'm not there, the harvest fails. If the harvest fails, the bank takes the land. My grandfather broke that ground in 1952. My father bled into it. I'm not walking away." Holloway nodded slowly. "I hear you, but I need you to understand what's on the table. What you did today isn't a stunt. It's not a curiosity. It's a capability. The kind of capability that changes how we think about pilot training, about combat aviation, about the entire model of how a human being interacts with an aircraft. You're not just good, May. You're a different thing. And different things don't come along often." May was quiet. Through the window, a jet lifted off the runway and climbed into the blue. The sound reached her a moment later, a low roar that faded into the sky. She watched it go. "My father flew that Piper Cub for 22 years, she said. "He knew every gust on that farm, every thermal, every place where the wind came off the creek and pushed you left when you weren't expecting it. He didn't go to flight school. He didn't have a simulator. He had the land and the plane and time. And he was the best pilot I ever saw. Better than me. I'm just doing what he taught me." Holloway was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe," he said, "but you're doing it in a way he never could. You've got his instinct and something else. Something that shows up once in a generation, if that. And it's being wasted on aphids." The word stung. May knew it was true. She'd known it for a long time, in the quiet hours, in the moments after the engine shut down and the silence came. She loved the farm. She loved the land. But she also loved the air. Loved it in a way that had nothing to do with spraying crops and everything to do with the feeling of being held up by nothing, of being between the earth and the sky, of being free in a way that no one on the ground could understand. She didn't answer. Holloway didn't push. Vasquez arrived 10 minutes later. She had a folder and a phone and the look of a woman who'd been walking fast. She glanced at May, then at Holloway. "I saw the telemetry," she said. "All 5 runs. The data is clean. It's not a glitch. It's not a simulator artifact. She did what she did." "She did what she did," Holloway confirmed. Vasquez turned to May. "I want to be direct with you. What you demonstrated today has implications that go beyond a recruitment pitch. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how we identify and develop pilot talent. Your performance suggests that our current training model is missing something. Something innate. Something that can't be built in a classroom or a sim bay. We need to understand it. And you're the only example we have. So you want to study me? May said. I want to offer you a choice. You can walk away. Go back to your farm. We'll classify the data and file it. No one will bother you again. Or you can stay. Not as a recruit. Not as a soldier. As a consultant. A civilian specialist. You'd fly, we'd observe, and we'd try to understand what you're doing and whether it can be taught. You'd be paid, well, enough to cover your farm's operating costs for a year, maybe 2. Enough to fix that engine. May felt the last part land. The engine. The one that coughed and sputtered and held by grace and stubbornness. The one she talked to like a living thing because she couldn't afford to fix it. I need to go home, May said. The harvest is in 3 weeks. Then go home. Harvest your wheat. And then come back. The offer stands for 60 days. May looked at Vasquez. Looked at Holloway. Looked through the window at the sky, where the jet had gone, where the blue stretched out over the ocean and kept going, past the horizon, past everything she knew. 60 days, she said. 60 days. She shook their hands. She collected her duffel bag. She walked to the car that would take her to the airport, and then to the plane that would take her to Wichita, and then to the truck that would take her home. She sat in the back seat and watched San Diego disappear in the rearview mirror. She did not call her farm. She did not call the bank. She sat in the silence and let the hum of the tires on the highway fill the space where the engine should have been. The wheat came in under a white sky. May drove the combine from 4 in the morning until 10 at night, stopping only to refuel and eat cold sandwiches standing in the field. The machine roared and shook and swallowed the crop row by row. Dust coated everything. Her arms, her hair, the inside of her nose. She breathed it. She'd always breathed it. It was the smell of home, of work, of a year's effort compressed into 2 weeks of noise and sweat. The yield was thin. Vasquez had been right about the rain, and the heat had been right about the damage. She got 60% of what she'd hoped. Enough to cover the operating loan. Not enough to cover the mortgage payment that was due in October. Not enough to fix the Piper Cub's engine. Not enough to keep the bank from calling. She parked the combine in the barn on the last night. Walked to the strip. Stood beside the Cub in the dark. The plane sat low and quiet, its yellow paint peeling, its propeller still. She put her hand on the cowling. The metal was cool. The engine was silent. 60 days, she whispered. She went inside, poured a glass of whiskey, sat on the porch and watched the sun go down over the stubble fields. The sky went orange, then red, then purple, then black. The stars came out. The same stars her father had flown under. The same stars her grandfather had plowed under. The same sky, the same dirt, the same life. She picked up the phone, dialed the number Vasquez had given her. It rang twice. May, Vasquez said, like she'd been waiting. I'm coming back. Miramar was different in September. The light was softer. The heat had broken. May stepped off the transport plane with the same duffel bag and the same boots. But something in her chest was different. Tighter. Heavier. Like she was carrying a second heartbeat. Vasquez met her at the gate. Holloway was beside her. And behind them, to May's surprise, was Reeves. He'd changed. Not his flight suit. Not his call sign. But the way he carried himself. The polite confusion was gone. In its place was something closer to hunger. The look of a man who'd been shown a door he didn't know existed and needed to see what was behind it. Welcome back, he said. And meant it. Hey, Vandal, May said. He smiled. A real one this time. The next 3 weeks were not what May expected. She'd imagined more simulators. More data collection. More instructors watching her fly and writing notes and whispering to each other. And there was some of that. But there was also something else. Holloway put her in the cockpit of a real T-38 trainer and let her fly. Not a simulation. Not a game. A real plane with a real engine and real air and the ground far below. The first flight nearly broke her. She climbed into the back seat. The canopy closed. The engine lit with a sound like the world cracking open. The T-38 rolled down the runway and lifted, and the ground fell away, and the ocean appeared vast and blue and endless, and May gripped the sides of the cockpit and breathed. It was different. It was so different from the Cub. The speed, the power, the responsiveness. The T-38 didn't shudder and cough and hold by grace. It surged. It obeyed. It was alive in a way the Cub had never been, and it terrified her, and it thrilled her, and she wanted to cry. "Take the stick," the pilot in front said. She took the stick. She flew, and the sky opened. She flew every day after that. T-38s. Then F divided by a -18s. Then, in the 4th week, an F-35. The real thing, not a simulator. The actual jet, with its glass cockpit and its whisper-quiet engine and its impossible gravity-defying agility. She flew it over the Pacific, over the desert, over the mountains. She flew it low, lower than they wanted, lower than the manual said. She flew it the way she flew the Cub, reading the air, reading the ground, reading the space between the rock and the sky. The instructors watched. They recorded. They studied. They argued. They ran her flight data through every model they had, and the models broke. Not because the data was wrong, because the data didn't fit the assumptions. May wasn't processing information the way a trained pilot did. She wasn't calculating vectors or managing energy states or running decision trees. She was feeling the aircraft the way a rider feels a horse, the way a surfer feels a wave, the way her father had felt the wheat. Holloway watched her land the F-35 after her 6th solo flight. She brought it in low, slow, smooth. The wheels kissed the runway. The chute bloomed. The jet rolled to a stop. He stood on the tarmac and didn't move for a long time. Reeves came up beside him. They watched May climb out of the cockpit. She pulled off her helmet. Her hair was plastered to her forehead. She was smiling. Not a big smile. A small one. The kind a person wears when they found something they didn't know they'd lost. "She's not a pilot," Reeves said quietly. "No," Holloway agreed. "She's something else." "Yeah. What do we do?" Holloway watched May walk toward them, her boots on the tarmac, her flight suit unzipped to the waist, the sun behind her. "We don't teach her," he said. "We learn from her." The program changed after that. Holloway restructured the curriculum. He brought May into the sim sessions not as a test subject but as a demonstrator. She flew the canyon scenario while the trainees watched. They watched her hands, her eyes, the way she didn't look at the instruments, the way she tilted her head a half-second before a turn, like she was listening to something the jet was saying. She couldn't explain it. That was the hardest part. They asked her to verbalize her process, to break it into steps, to teach it. She tried. She really tried. She'd sit in the debrief room and say things like, "You just feel where the air wants to go." And the trainees would look at her with blank, frustrated faces. You can't feel the air in a simulator. You can't feel the air in a classroom. You can't teach a person to feel something they've never felt. But they could watch. They could study. They could start to see the shape of what she did, even if they couldn't replicate it. And that was enough. That was a beginning. Reeves became her shadow, not in a competitive way. The rivalry was gone, burned off in those first 5 simulator runs. What replaced it was something rarer. Respect, curiosity, a genuine desire to understand. He flew with her, beside her. He'd call out what he saw and she'd call out what she felt, and slowly, over weeks, a language started to form. A bridge between his precision and her instinct, between the manual and the wind. One evening, after a long day of flying, they sat on the tarmac with their helmets off and watched the sun go down. The jets were dark shapes against the orange sky. The air smelled like fuel and salt. "Do you miss it?" Reeves asked. "The farm." May thought about it. The wheat, the barn, the screen door, the Piper Cub sitting in the dirt, silent. "Every day," she said. "Then why are you here?" She was quiet for a while. A plane took off in the distance, a low rumble that faded into the sky. "Because my father gave me the sky," she said. "He put me in that Cub when I was 9 and he said, 'This is yours, not the plane, the sky, it's yours.' And I spent 6 years flying 30 feet over wheat because I had to, because the farm needed me, because there was no one else. And I loved it. I did. But it was a small sky, A sky with edges. A sky that ended where the property line ended. She looked at Reeves. This sky doesn't have edges. He nodded. He understood. Maybe not all of it, but enough. 6 weeks into the program, a letter arrived. Handwritten on lined paper, in a shaking script May recognized instantly. Her father. He'd been in a care facility outside of Wichita since the stroke. His right hand still worked. Slowly, painfully, but he wrote. The letter was short. May, they showed me the video. The one on the phone. The girl in the jet. I didn't know it was you at first. Then I saw your hands. The way you hold the stick. I taught you that. I taught you to hold it like a bird. I'm proud of you. I need you to know that. I'm proud of you not because you beat their pilot. I'm proud of you because you flew. You flew the way I hoped you would. The way I knew you could. Not for the farm. Not for the bank. Not because someone needed you to. For you. For the sky. Don't come back for me. I'm fine. The wheat can wait. The bank can wait. You fly, May. You fly as far as it goes. Love, Dad. May read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it and put it in her breast pocket. Over her heart. She went to the flight line. Climbed into an F-35. Flew west over the Pacific until the fuel warning came on, and then she turned around and flew home. She didn't cry in the cockpit. She cried on the tarmac, after the engine shut down, sitting on the ground with her back against the wheel well. Reeves found her there. He didn't say anything. He sat down next to her. They sat in the silence and watched the sun go down. The 60 days became 90. 90 became 120. The Navy extended May's contract, then extended it again. She was no longer a consultant. She was a civilian flight instructor, a role they'd created specifically for her. No rank, no uniform requirement, no obligation to deploy, just a woman who flew and taught and tried, in her halting, imperfect way, to pass on what her father had given her. The bank called about the mortgage. May answered. She told them she was selling the South Quarter. 80 acres. It hurt. It hurt like cutting off a finger. But it would cover the mortgage for 2 years, and the Piper Cub's engine rebuild and the property tax. The rest of the farm would sit fallow until she figured out what to do with it. Maybe rent it to the neighbor. Maybe sell more. Maybe someday go back and plant wheat again. Maybe not. She called the care facility. Spoke to her father on the phone. His words were slow, slurred, but his mind was clear. You sold the South Quarter, he said. Not a question. I had to. I know. It's okay. The land was never the point. What was the point? A long pause. The sound of breathing. The sound of a man choosing words carefully because his mouth didn't always cooperate. You were the point. The land was just where you learned. May closed her eyes. Pressed the phone harder against her ear. I miss you, Dad. I miss you too, baby. Go fly. She hung up, wiped her face, walked to the flight line. It happened on a Tuesday in November. For months after May's first visit, the base was running a large-scale exercise. 12 jets, multiple squadrons, a full combat scenario over the desert range. May was scheduled to fly as an observer in the back seat of a 2-seat F-35. Monitoring the exercise and taking notes for the training program. The lead pilot was Reeves. He'd been promoted to flight lead for the exercise. His call sign was still Vandal. His hands were still steady. His flying was still clean. But he was different now. Looser, less rigid. May had changed him in small ways. He flew with more feel, more trust in the air, less in the instruments. He'd never say it. She'd never say it. But it was there. The exercise went well for the first hour. Then the scenario changed. The opposing force introduced an unexpected element. A low-altitude threat in a canyon system that wasn't in the briefing. 3 contacts moving fast, below radar coverage. The exercise controllers flagged it as a surprise inject. The pilots had to adapt. Reeves called the flight. All elements break formation. Canyon run. 2-ship. Follow my lead. The jets peeled off. Reeves dove toward the canyon. May watched from the back seat. She watched his hands, his eyes, The way he read the rock. He was good. He was very good. But the canyon was tight, and the contacts were faster than expected, and Reeves was flying by the book. The right book. The best book. But the book. May leaned forward. Jake. The left wall. There's a thermal column coming off the south face. You can ride it up and come over the ridge. They won't see you. Reeves glanced back. In the middle of a combat exercise. At 500 knots. He glanced back. You sure? I can feel it. The air's lifting on the left. Trust me. He trusted her. He banked left. Found the thermal. Rode it up. Came over the ridge in a silent arc and dropped on the lead contact from above. Kill confirmed. 2 more to go. They cleared the canyon in 90 seconds. The exercise controllers flagged it as the fastest canyon engagement in the program's history. When they landed, the debrief room was full. Every instructor, every pilot, Vasquez, Holloway, the exercise controllers. They played the footage. They played it twice, 3 times. Then they turned to May. She was sitting in the back row, still in her flight suit, still wearing her helmet under her arm. She looked up and saw their faces. All of them. The same look she'd seen 4 months ago. The frozen look. The look of people watching something they couldn't explain. Holloway stood. Ms. Calloway, he said. What you just did in that back seat was not observation. That was instruction. In real time. In a combat scenario. You read a thermal at 500 knots in a canyon you've never flown and you called it to your pilot and he trusted you and it worked. That's not data. That's not training. That's something we don't have a name for. May looked at him. Looked at the room. At Reeves, still in his flight suit, standing near the front. He gave her a small nod. A small smile. It's got a name, May said. My father called it listening. You listen to the air. You listen to the plane. You listen to the ground. And if you're quiet enough, they tell you what to do. The room was silent. The frozen silence. The kind that meant something had shifted and couldn't shift back. Holloway sat down. Picked up his pen. Put it down. Picked it up again. All right, he said. Then we learned to listen. May stayed at Miramar for 3 years. In that time, she flew over 400 sorties. She trained 62 pilots. Not in the traditional sense. She couldn't teach them to feel the way she felt. But she could teach them to slow down. To stop looking at the instruments and start looking at the sky. To trust their hands. To trust the air. To listen. Some of them got it. Most didn't. But the ones who did, even a little, flew differently. Cleaner. Calmer. More alive. Reeves was the first. There were others after him. A woman from Alabama who'd grown up flying her uncle's Cessna over catfish ponds. A kid from Montana who'd learned to glide on thermals in a sailplane. They came to May and she saw herself in them. The dirt under the fingernails. The quiet. The sky. She rebuilt the Piper Cub. Flew it back to Kansas on a Saturday in April. Landed on the dirt strip behind the barn. Walked the fields. Touched the soil. Stood in the empty kitchen and looked at her mother's chair and felt the grief and the love and the gratitude all at once. The way they always came, tangled together, inseparable. She flew the Cub the next morning. 30 feet over the stubble. The engine ran clean. The spray rig was empty. She wasn't spraying anything. She was just flying. Her father's sky. Her sky. Small and golden and endless. She went back to Miramar on Monday. The last flight was on a Wednesday in August, 3 years to the day after her first visit. The Navy was holding a ceremony. Something about the training program. Awards. Speeches. Plaque with her name on it. May wore civilian clothes. Jeans. Flannel. Boots with dirt in the seams. She hadn't changed. She wasn't going to change. Reeves found her afterward, outside the hangar. The sun was setting. The jets were dark shapes on the tarmac. The air smelled like fuel and salt and the particular sweetness of a California evening. They're naming the new simulator building after you, he said. They should name it after my father. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll name it after both of you. The Callaway Reeves Flight Training Center. May laughed. It was the first time she'd laughed in a while. A real laugh. full and surprised. "You'd hate that," she said. "I'd hate it, but I'd put up with it." They stood in the silence. The sky went orange, then red, then purple. The stars came out. The same stars. The same sky, but bigger now. Wider. Without edges. "What will you do?" Reeves asked. "After this." May thought about it. The farm was rented now. The mortgage was paid. The cub was in the barn, clean and running. She could go back. Plant wheat. Fly the South Quarter. Live the life she'd been born into, where she could fly. "I think I'll fly," she said. "Where?" She looked up. The sky stretched out above her, vast and dark and full of stars. No property lines. No county roads. No edges. Just air. Just the space between the ground and everything else. Just the place her father had given her when she was 9 years old and the cub lifted off the dirt and the world fell away. "Wherever the air goes," she said. Reeves nodded. He understood. They stood together on the tarmac as the last light faded and the first stars appeared and the jets sat silent around them, waiting for morning, waiting for hands on sticks, waiting for someone to listen to the sky and answer back. May put her hands in her pockets, felt the dirt under her fingernails, felt the calluses on her palms, felt the small, steady hum in her chest that had been there since she was 9 years old. The hum of an engine, the hum of the air, the hum of a life lived at 30 feet, then 500, then 40,000, and still climbing. She breathed in. The air tasted like salt and fuel and distance. She breathed out, and the sky held her. The end.